This is The Long Road to Publishing, the podcast where we hear from authors who have traveled a long and bumpy road to publishing their books. Whether you're just starting out on your own writing and publishing journey, or if you're all too aware of the many possible detours along the way, this podcast is for you. I'm your host, Eva Langston, author, writing instructor, and creator of Eva's newsletter for writers on Substack. Thank you so much for coming along on the ride. Okay, I want to just get right into this amazing episode, so I won't say too much except that Moniza's publishing journey is so crazy and so inspiring. After pursuing traditional publishing for 10 years, after experiencing so many rejections and close calls, she now has 2 picture books out in the world and a middle grade novel releasing this September. Links for her picture books and a pre-order link for her middle grade horror novel are all in the show notes, so please check them out. A quick reminder to rate, review, and subscribe to the podcast. You guys know, but please share about the long road to publishing on social media or in person so we can spread the word to other writers and publishing curious people. And now on with the episode. Moniza's first book deal was for the picture book Ritu and the Sun. And now, after a decade of rejection, it's finally Moniza's time to shine. So I'm calling this episode Kidlit Author Gets Her Place in the Sun. Moniza Hossain is a Singaporean author of Bengali descent who writes children's books inspired by her heritage. Her debut picture book, Street Puppy Masjid Cat, has been shortlisted for the Hedwig Anwar Children's Book Award 2026. She is also the author of the picture book Ritu in the Sun and the forthcoming middle grade novel Bad Things Happened Here. Her short stories can be found in the Lammy-nominated anthology Being Ace and the Freeman Award-winning anthology The Beasts Beneath the Winds. When she's not busy writing, she teaches English literature and paints dragons. Moniza lives in Manchester with her husband. So welcome to the Long Road to Publishing, Moniza.
Thank you for having me. I love this podcast.
Oh, I'm so happy you're here. And I feel like, you've had this very long journey, which we'll get into, but it's like it's all happening now. You have all of these books coming out. So it's like when it rains, it pours.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, I know by the time this episode comes out, you will have 2 picture books out in the world, and you also have this middle grade novel coming out. So do you want to give us quick pitches for all of these books?
Sure. My debut picture book is Street Puppy Masjid Cat, and that came out last year. And it's a friendship story about a stray dog's unlikely friendship with a cat that lives in a mosque, and it's like super adorable. And my next picture book, which is coming out in a few days, is Ritu in the Sun. I've got it right here.
Oh, beautiful.
Yeah, and this book, Ritu in the Sun, is about this little girl's experience with colorism, but it approaches that topic in a very empathetic and sensitive way, and it's more of a celebration of the beauty of brown skin. And my middle grade novel is a little bit of a departure from all of that because it's horror.
Ooh.
And bad things happen here. I've got that here as well, actually.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of right there in the title, right?
Yeah, exactly. Bad Things Happened Here is about a boy who travels to Singapore to reconnect with his grandmother. But then when he's in his grandma's house, he finds his mom's ghost, but she's like trapped at the age of 12. And together they have to solve a murder mystery in order for her spirit to move on to the afterlife. It's a bit of a mystery and it's a bit of a horror, and it's very different from my picture books.
Oh, I love that. And this is something we've talked about on the podcast before, is I think a lot of times people hear horror and they think like gory, gruesome, but like a ghost story can be considered horror. When I was in like upper elementary school, like 3rd, 4th, 5th grade, I was obsessed with ghost stories, absolutely obsessed. So I have a 3rd grader right now, and I've given her some of the ghost stories that I liked as a kid, and she likes them, but then she will not go to sleep in her own bed at night. So, I'm like, do I want to give this to her, or do I want her to be able to sleep in her own bed? Well, it's very exciting. You have all these books coming out. And so now I want to hear the journey of how you got to this point. When do you feel like you first got serious about writing? And I'm also curious what you started out writing. Picture book, middle grade, something else?
Yeah, I mean, I have an exact time period of when I seriously started pursuing traditional publishing, which is different from being serious about writing, because I've always written. But then when I graduated from university, I told myself it wasn't like a plausible career path for me because back then there weren't a lot of writers who wrote for children who were brown. So I just didn't think that that's something I could pursue. So I didn't really do anything about it until 2016. And in 2016, I had finished a young adult novel, which was like a young adult fantasy. And that's when I was like, you know what? I think I can actually like try and get an agent. So 2016 was different from earlier when I had been in university because by that point, We Need Diverse Books had been a thing. So they had actually kind of changed the landscape of children's publishing quite a bit. There were a lot more writers of color who were publishing. So it just seemed like something I could do.
Were you teaching at that point and kind of writing on the side, or
Yeah, I was teaching and writing on the side. I don't teach now because I live in Manchester, but I don't
I see.
I
Oh,
don't
yeah.
like I don't do that anymore. But yeah, in Singapore I was teaching and I was like writing at the same time and trying to get published simultaneously, which is always hard, but you make time.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, and I do remember when We Need Diverse Books came out on the scene, and it was kind of like the heyday of writer Twitter too. And
Yeah.
yeah, well, and that's great that like seeing that kind of made you be like, okay, this is something that I could pursue and, find success with. Okay, so you had a YA fantasy novel, you started querying agents. Tell me what happened next.
Nothing happened. I
That's
tried, I
a
tried to
familiar story.
query.
Yeah.
Basically, right? I tried to query that book and it died in the query trenches, which is an experience I think a lot of writers go through. Your first book that you attempt to query doesn't really land you an agent. But it was a useful experience anyway. I feel like in this industry, like even from the failures, you learn quite a lot. So in this case, what I learned from this particular book was that maybe I should not write young adult and maybe I should try something else. Because some of the feedback I got was that my voice read more middle grade. So I tried writing middle grade after that. And in 2018, I started querying a middle grade novel. And that novel got me my agent. And it got me like 7 offers of rep from 7 different agents. Yeah. So I think that first book that didn't work was helpful because it helped me pinpoint what was a better fit for my voice.
That's interesting. And I have heard that like middle grade, it's like a very particular voice, right? Was the middle grade that you got the agent with, was that also fantasy?
Yes, it was a fantasy. It was like, based on kind of like South Asian mythology. It was like a secondary world fantasy, very immersive, very adorable. It did not sell. So even though I got like 7 offers of rep, it's still ultimately when I went out on submission to editors, that book does not exist essentially. Like I've given up on it.
Oh my gosh. And isn't that like the crazy roller coaster of this industry is you have this book that like you had 7 agent offers, and then when you go out on submission with it, it doesn't sell and it dies on submission and you're like, what is happening? Like yeah. Did you do much revision on that with your agent or did you kind of go out right away?
Oh, we revised it. I think I took
Yeah.
about like a few months to revise it with my agent, and we made it as perfect as we possibly could. And then we sent it out. And just, it's one of those things. Middle grade has always been a really tough market. It's like even harder, but back then it was already quite tough. So I think that's, you just can't predict what's going to land. I no longer feel any sadness over this. This is like a long time. This is like 2018. So I'm like, I'm over it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's like after a while you just move on and you get excited about the next project. Well, I don't know if you have any ideas about this, but from what you've heard or read, why is it so hard to sell middle grade?
So I think there are like different reasons now than before. It's always been tough because I think middle grade, you don't sell directly to the readers. You sell to parents, you sell to gatekeepers, librarians, teachers. So that always makes it a little tougher, a little more
Mm.
tricky. But like now it's hard because first of all, like, Barnes and Noble isn't really stocking middle grade. So that makes it very difficult for readers to, I think they stock some, but not all. Like
They
it's,
probably like stock Harry Potter and that's it.
yeah, it's like I don't quite understand like the technical details of what's happening there, but it's like harder to kind of get middle grade into bookstores. It's easier to get adult books and like YA, number one. And then the other thing that's making it kind of difficult is like book bans, because of book
Mm,
bans, writers who write about sensitive about
right.
our
Yeah.
identities. Yeah. our books can get banned, and then that means they're not in libraries, and publishers have become more risk averse as a result, so they're less likely
Hmm.
to bet on a writer of color or a queer writer. So these are all things that impact us disproportionately compared to adult writers.
Yeah. Oh, it's so frustrating. I've heard that before that middle grade is tough. So it sounds like there's a lot working against it right now.
Well, you write middle grade as well, so you're
Well, I did. And I had an agent for a middle grade novel, and then I ended up parting ways with him. And it's funny, like you said, you kind of like don't even think about that novel anymore. Like that novel that I had the agent for, and then we parted ways, and I queried it for a while. I never could get another agent for it. And now I look back on it and I'm like, that's probably for the best. Because I think that book had some major problems that like my agent at the time and I just never quite figured out. So it is like time can make you look back at something and be like, okay, you know what? I'm okay with the fact that that didn't go anywhere. Okay, well, so you had this novel die on submission, and then yeah, walk me through what happened after that.
I wrote three more novels, which also died on submission.
Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. So you had, is that a total of four?
It's four. I think I had four different novels die on submission.
Oh my
Yeah.
gosh.
And I'm extremely lucky because remember how I had seven offers of rep, and you've been in this industry and you know what it's like. I could have easily picked someone who would abandon me the minute my sought after manuscript didn't sell. I very, very luckily chose someone, Uver Stender from Triada US, who actually stuck with me. And even though my manuscripts weren't selling, he was aware that it's not really my fault because he could see the quality of the manuscripts and how polished, and something just wasn't landing, but it wasn't really something he blamed me for. And he stuck with me. So very grateful I
Yeah.
chose the right guy.
Oh my gosh. So you said, so your agent is based in the US?
Yes, that's right.
So that's interesting. So you were, where were you at the time when you were querying agents?
I was in Singapore. So I'm Singaporean, and I wrote my books in Singapore. Now I live in Manchester because I moved here with my husband. But back then I was living in Singapore. Singapore doesn't really have agents, and most of our publishers are very, very tiny with a very small reach. And it's one of those things where if you go into our bookshops, and we have, like massive bookshops and lots of readers, you'll find that the shelves are just stocked with American writers.
Hmm.
So
Yeah.
in order to get my book into the local bookstores and get that kind of reach, like the easiest path I thought at the time would probably be to kind of like go the American route.
Yeah, yeah. And you were writing in English, right? So, yeah. Okay. And then I guess my other question is because I agree, like, oh my gosh, thank goodness you chose someone who's stuck with you. Was there anything when you were kind of having calls with all of these different agents that stuck out to you about the agent you chose and like this was the reason why you chose him?
Oh my goodness, I like them all. Uver was the first one who made an offer on me, and I guess I was just loyal to him, and that's really why I chose him. And he's also
Yeah.
extremely experienced. He's been in this industry for so long. A lot of the agents who did offer on me were also experienced, and they'd made some like really big splashy deals. But like just because of like the fact that Uver offered on me first, I kind of like went with him. I don't think that's a rational way to make that decision, but I'm
Yeah, but
glad
it
I
worked
did.
out for you.
It
So,
did,
yeah.
yeah. He gave me good vibes, and I'm glad I listened.
Yeah. Okay. So here we are. You've now had four, were they all middle grade novels die on submission?
All look great.
I mean, I really want to know, like, how did you get through that disappointment? Like, how did you stay sane? Maybe you didn't stay sane. I don't know. But yeah, how were you feeling and how did you get through that time?
So I think like one thing that I did, which is not what people recommend because they always tell you to, like find your community and make friends with other writers. But at that point, because I was going through so much rejection, I was just in like a mentally just in a very bad place. So I kind of like drew back from writing communities for a while. I kind of like didn't participate as much in the online discords that I was a part of. I didn't really like maintain those friendships because I was just in a really bad mentally. I was just not in a good place where I could be supportive. I was just feeling really, really terrible. So I focused more on my friends who are outside of writing. I think that's the only like you need friends who are not writers. You
Yeah.
need a life outside of it, like having children, which you have. Like I think that really helps because that puts everything in perspective. I don't have
Yeah.
kids. Yeah, but I've got family and I focused on them. That really helped.
I'm glad you say that because I know a lot of times people come on the podcast and they say, "Oh, I needed my writer community or writing community is so important," which I agree with. But also, to your point, sometimes you need somebody who is not in that community and to like just have conversations that are not about books and writing and, just get away from that. Because I definitely have friends who like they read books occasionally, but they're not, immersed in this world. And it's nice to talk to them about just things that are totally unrelated. And it can be hard too if you're like having like novel after novel die on submission, and then you see somebody who's like, I signed with my agent and I sold a book 2 weeks later, and you're like, I'm happy for you, but also that's not what I need to
Yeah.
hear right now.
Yeah, it's so hard because you are happy. Like, I'm genuinely so happy when my friends do well. But at the same time, when you are going through it, like it's so difficult to, yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Well, and I mean, as you know, this is part of the reason why I started this podcast was like I was like I want to hear the stories of the other people because as you know, I've had novels die on sub, but I want to hear about the other people who've had this experience and they've gotten through it and they're on the other side like you. So yeah, okay. So we're at four novels dying on submission. You're having a tough time, but you are still writing, it sounds like. I mean, do you feel like the writing was a way for you to get through it? Like, or were you feeling scared, like, I'm going to sit down and write another book that's not going to sell? Or was it a combination of the two?
I mean, it's definitely, I mean, you've experienced this as well. It's always a combination of the two, right? Like there is a part of you that feels like everything you do is wasted effort and why are you wasting so much time on this? But then at the same time, like a lot of writers, I write compulsively, so I would have written regardless. So I was just writing anyway. And whenever anything happens, I want to write. So that was just like it's my coping mechanism. But the other thing that really helps with writing is that if you have a book that's dying on submission, the best way to kind of get over it is to hyperfixate on a different book. That
Yeah.
is like nothing beats, it's like you're falling in love with a different person, that other book's your ex. So it just kind of
Yeah. Yeah.
helps to get over it a little bit.
Yeah, no, I agree. I always think it's so funny, like, and I guess you're gonna be having this experience where you're having to talk about a book that's just come out, but you're already writing something new and you're obsessed with the new thing. And you're like, oh, right, that old thing that I wrote years ago. Let me even try to remember what that was because I do the same thing. As soon as I've got a new project, I'm like obsessed with the new project. So, yeah, I mean, I think you're right. I think that like there is that fear of, oh gosh, I'm doing this again. I'm putting myself through this again. But you just have to like enjoy the story you're telling no matter what happens to it. Okay, well, so you have this amazing agent who is sticking with you. To walk me through what happens after all four of these middle grade novels die on sub.
Yeah, so the other thing about my agent that's kind of amazing is that he was supporting me as a writer, like in terms of my career, right? Like he wasn't interested in one manuscript, he was interested in me as an author. And he's quite diverse in like the kinds of books that he represents. So he represents different age groups and different genres. So that was really, really important to me. That's part of what I was like looking at when I was choosing an agent as well. So what happened after I had written four books that were middle grade books was that I had this experience where I spoke to this little girl and she told me like her skin had been ruined by the sun because she went on holiday and she came back with a suntan. So she's South Asian like me, she's Bengali like me, and she had a tan and she told me that like she didn't like the way she looked anymore. And it was really upsetting because
Yeah.
I thought this was like the kind of thing that happened when I was a kid. I didn't realize this was still happening. And it kind of like inspired me to write Ritu in the Sun because I wanted to write something to kind of address this issue. And Ritu in the Sun immediately felt like a picture book. I knew this was going to be a picture book. So I went to my agent with that, and my agent was like, sure, yeah, I'll help you sell a picture book. He was like completely on board, right away. Not even a question. Like he was just like okay with it. So yeah, I mean, I'm very lucky in the agent that I chose. And Ritu in the Sun ended up being the book that I made my first book deal with. And it sold to Random House Children's Books. And that was my first ever book deal.
Oh, wow. When you had this idea for Ritu in the Sun, had you tried writing picture books before?
No, I had not. Ritu in the Sun was my first ever picture book that I wrote. It just kind of poured out of me because it came from a place of conviction. I felt so strongly about the topic that the story just came out of me. But it looks very different now than it did then. Because when I wrote it, it was more poetic. It was more like a poem. It was different. This is a much more rooted in narrative and in character. And it got there through many multiple revisions because I had to find out about picture books, what they look like. I had to read a lot of picture books to learn about the genre. And ultimately, that's how I kind of like crafted a book that could sell.
And did you do some of that revision with your agent, or I'm sure you did some with your editor as well, but did you do some with your agent first?
I did some with my agent, and then we went out on submission, and there was this amazing editor who liked the book because she was also a person of color, and she saw herself in the story because she had also experienced it, and she had a child who was experiencing it, where like grandparents were telling them that your kid is going to get a tan. You should like make sure he stays out of the sun so he doesn't get so dark. So she understood why this was a necessary story, and she wanted to buy the book, but she wanted it edited first. So she came back with a revise and resubmit, and I worked with her on this book for a while. She was amazing to work with, and she like got the story to this point where it was like a really good story. And then she took it to acquisition, and it died.
Oh no, you
It
like
died.
skipped over all this the first time. You're so I'm glad we're getting into it. Okay, so you did a revise and resubmit. It did not make it past acquisitions.
Yeah.
So then did you go back out to other editors with this revised manuscript?
Yeah, I was heartbroken because I really wanted to work with her. I thought she was great. This was a mid-tier publisher. I'm not going to name them. I was so willing to work with them, but I was devastated when it didn't sell. But then the story was so much stronger. And basically, this wonderful editor had worked with me for free out of just like, she was so generous with her time and her feedback. And as a result, the story was stronger. So then we sent it out again, and only one publisher was interested in this story, and that was Random House Children's Books, and it was my editor Maria, who was also a woman of color. So immediately she could relate to this book. She understood that this was a necessary story that needs to be told. That there is a market for it, and also there is just a need for it. And she luckily could get it through acquisition. So
Yeah. Oh my gosh, the roller coaster just keeps on. So, phew, you finally had your first book deal with a picture book, which was like not necessarily what you expected. Although it's interesting to me because I do think sometimes we get an idea and it fits with a certain genre, right? Like it's like this idea is best suited for a novel, or this idea is best suited for a short story, or a poem, or a children's book. And so part of it is like figuring out what the idea is best suited for, you know? So you just knew like this is not a novel idea, this is a picture book idea. So then after you were working on Ritu in the Sun and getting the deal for that, were you like, let me try writing more picture books?
yeah, I kind of fell in love with picture books as I was figuring out how to make the Ritu story the perfect story. I was reading so many picture books, and they're just amazing. Like, I don't know if I mean, obviously you do because you've got kids, so you must have read a lot of picture books. But even if you're just an adult and you're reading them, they just soothe you. Like, they're so healing.
Yeah, and they are sometimes like they are sometimes kind of like poetry because it's these images and like the words are so I mean there can't be too many words. So everything has to have a lot hold a lot. There's certain books like Where the Wild Things Are or Goodnight Moon or some of these classics. I even though I've read them like a bajillion times, every time I read them, I'm still like a little bit moved or like really impressed by what they're able to accomplish. So, yeah. Okay, so then you were writing some more picture books and yeah, walk me through what happened.
Yeah, so I was just writing other picture books, and then almost immediately afterwards, I had written another book, which was Street Puppy Masjid Cat, and that was like inspired by I was looking after my sister's dog at the time, and I was walking him, and he there's a mosque near my house, and that mosque had a cat that lived in it, and my sister's dog was like obsessed with the cat, but like
Oh.
dogs are not allowed in mosques, so he would just kind of like stand like outside at the gate and just like cry. And the cat would be inside hissing at him. And it was just like such a hilarious like image, it's like
Yeah.
this unrequited love, and it made me want to write a book. So I wrote, my second picture book manuscript, Street Puppy Majid Cat, and that sold very, very quickly. Like this is like very different from other experiences I've had with going out on submission, and it sold to a different editor at Little Bee Books, which
Mm.
is a smaller publisher, but they are distributed by Simon and Schuster, so they still have like Big Five distribution. And it was an amazing experience working with Jamie, my editor for Little Bee Books.
Yeah.
That was my second.
What was it like working with, because you've had now had two different illustrators for your two different picture books. What was it like working with the illustrators?
Yeah, that was like, oh my goodness, it's so much fun. I can't speak for other writers because I'm sure there are writers who get paired with illustrators where they don't like the illustrators or they don't like the style, but I've been like incredibly blessed. And both of my books are visually just so stunning. Like to the point where I think they're like a lot like more beautiful than they are. Like the art is better than the writing, but that's okay. So I'm like paired with some of the most talented artists I could have picked.
But the art is inspired by your words, so the art wouldn't be there if it wasn't for your words. So
You're very kind. Yeah, I'll take credit for it.
yeah, yeah. Oh, that's good. I'm so glad that you had a good experience. And I'm sure it must just be after years and years and years of working and getting rejections and having novels not sell, it must just be like such a wonderful experience to like have people say yes and to have like your books come out in the world. Well, okay. So then I don't know if it's time for this story yet, but I know there's kind of a crazy story about how your middle grade novel got its book deal. So is it time to tell that story?
Yeah, let's tell that story. Every single thing that's happened to me in publishing has been just like insane. Um, so the middle grade is no different. So bad things happened here. I think it was like the second book that I wrote. So after my devastating, no, it's the third. I'm sorry. I'm just like losing track. After my devastating experience of, not selling my first book and then writing another one, that one not selling, I wrote Bad Things Happened Here, which was a middle grade horror. And it was my first time writing horror. I've always read horror. I'm a huge horror fan, but my other two books were fantasy. So then I wrote this book, and immediately it was just like such a different idea. Like it's familiar but it's unusual, so I thought like the idea had legs, and I
Hmm.
sent it to my agent and he was very excited about it. But then again, we sent it out on submission. This was in 2021. We sent it out on submission and it did not sell, and I was like devastated because of all my books, this was my favorite. Like this was the book that I loved the most, and it's also the book that made me cry the hardest. Like there is a chapter in this book that I have literally never seen because whenever I'm working on it, be it drafting or editing, I am just like in tears. Like it's such a moving book, and I was so upset that it didn't sell. And
So,
then
and I'm sure this, you were like, this was your third book going out on submission. So you're like, third time's the charm. This is the best one yet. I love this book. So I'm sure that was devastating when it didn't
yeah,
sell.
I mean, I had so much experience with writing at this point and working with, like editing it and all that, that I was like pretty polished. Like I was
Yeah.
writing at a professional level, and it's just devastating to still be getting rejections at that point. It was really, really hard. So, okay, so fast forward to 2024, and at this point, I've had, my two other book deals, but they're picture book deals. And then randomly, my agent calls me, and he's like, "Oh, by the way, there is this editor called Cade, and he is interested in your book." Cade works for Holiday House. And turns out in 2021, when my book had first gone out on submission, Cade had been an intern at Uver's agency. And back then, Cade had read the book and he liked it so much that he remembered it like what is that? It's 3 years, right? 3 years later when he became an editor. And he told me that when he became an editor, like one of the things he told himself was that he was going to acquire books like Bad Things Happened Here. Like that was like something he became an editor with the intention of doing. Like these were the kinds of books he wanted to acquire, which is just like when you are getting rejections and you feel like your book, is not touching anyone, no one is reading it, like it's bizarre that at that point an editor had read my book and it had informed the kinds of books he wanted to acquire.
Yeah. And you had no idea. Like this was
No,
all
none.
happening behind the scenes. No, yeah.
I mean, I couldn't have known that Kate would become an acquiring editor. Like there was no way. I didn't even know Kate had read my book. Like, because you don't get the names of the interns at the agency who are reading the books. You just get their feedback and then you incorporate the feedback.
Okay. Okay. So he, as an intern, he had read your book when it was on submission. He had been like, that's the type of book I want to acquire one day when I become an editor. And then he becomes an editor at Holiday House. And then I guess, did he like know that I guess that your book was still had not been published and he contacted your agent, was like, is it still available?
Exactly, yeah. So he could, he knew that this was a book that was still available, and he contacted my agent, and we were like, yes, of course. So I kind of like edited it again because I am a perfectionist, and I made sure that it was polished up because between 2021 and 2024, I had grown so much as a writer because you're always growing. So I didn't want to send back that old manuscript, so I polished it up a little bit, and then we sent it to him and he bought it. So, and now
Oh
this is
my
a book that
gosh.
exists
And it's coming out in the fall in October?
in September,
It's
1st of
September.
September
Okay. So
coming
it'll
out.
it'll be out in September. Oh, that's awesome. That's so and it's a really like happy story too because it's like this book that you thought was just it's just done. We've shopped it around to everyone. Everyone said no. And then I've had some people tell me like, well, I don't like to use the term die on submission because you never know what might happen, and like books that you think are done they could come back around. But also I think it's interesting because like when you are submitting your work out, whether it's to a contest or to agents or to editors, like you don't always know what people are saying about or thinking about your work. And like I had this experience when I was judging a short story contest, and like the judges and I were having conversations about all of these stories. And then there were stories that, a lot of us really liked that we didn't end up choosing. But it's like those people are never going to know. Like we had this conversation about their book. We talked about the thing or their story. We talked about the things that we liked about it. So it is interesting, maybe hopeful to think about like, hey, just because I got rejections doesn't mean that people weren't having positive thoughts about my work.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. And in some ways, Cade was right because when he read this book in 2021, his instincts told him that this was a book that had legs. And like he was right because now that, this book is, well, it's not out yet, but it exists. We've sent it out to reviewers and stuff. It was selected for the Junior Library Guild Gold Standard selection.
Oh,
So
wow. Oh,
yeah, so
congratulations.
yeah, thank you. His instincts were right, and my agent's instincts were right too. So like, just because you're getting rejections, just because people are not kind of like picking up on the story, like Ritu and the Sun as well. Like the first publisher did not want to acquire it, but then now that it's out, like every single trade review that we've received has been a starred review, and so it's just like the rejections can feel really brutal in the moment, but then that doesn't mean that the story itself doesn't have merit.
Yeah, yeah. Oh my gosh. I mean, it is really, I'm so glad I have you on here because this is just such an interesting and like uplifting story of like what happens if you just keep going and keep trying. And like I said, it's like now all of a sudden, all these years of work, and now you've got basically three books coming out within like 12 months. So,
Yeah.
since you have the picture books, have you done any school visits or anything like that?
Yeah, I'm in a very kind of like complicated position because I'm based in the UK. I live in Manchester, but then my books are published in the US. So it's like my publishers have connections in American schools. So I think it would have been easier for me to go to American schools.
Right.
So I need to kind of like find my own way to the schools. I found it easier to approach libraries instead because just as an adult, like just randomly like cold calling schools, like, can I please come to
Yeah.
your school? Is just I need to do it. I mean, I do need to kind of like work on that. But mostly I've just been doing library visits and reading to little kids, and that's been very, very nice.
Is any of your books going to come out in the UK, like with a UK publisher?
At this point, no. At this point, my books are all coming out with like North American, but they're available in the UK. You can buy them online and they'll be delivered to your house, but they're not in UK bookstores.
I
Um,
see.
and I don't have like a UK based publisher to kind of help me with like, so that makes like promoting the books a little bit more complicated.
Yeah, that's a little tricky. You'll have to come to the US sometime just so you can go in a bookstore and see your book or like do an event.
Oh, yeah.
I guess I have a two-part question is what are you working on now? And also, since you've now got the middle grade and the picture book, what do you see are kind of the pros and cons of writing for multiple ages and multiple genres?
I feel like this is inevitable for most writers if it's something you can do. Like if you can write for multiple age groups and genres, I think most writers end up doing it just because it gives you so much more flexibility. This is like such a tough industry, and like various age groups and genres take turns becoming impossible to sell to. So when that happens and it's like suddenly no picture books are being acquired, then you can write like middle grade, or no middle grades are being acquired, you can write adult. Like that kind of flexibility is so helpful. And I think especially if you're a minority author, because I think like it's a little bit tougher for us as well because there's fewer slots for us. So that sort of flexibility really, really helps you stay published. I feel like that's just my sense of it. Like, would you agree?
Yeah, I mean, I'm just thinking about, other people I've had on the podcast and Shanna Upchurch, who also I think she started writing picture book, but then she ended up getting an agent for a middle grade. I feel like a lot of times you see that pairing of like people who are writing both picture book and middle grade because they're both really hard to sell, but it's like that way you can have two different paths. And so now she has a picture book that just came out, but she also got a middle grade book deal. So very similar to you. But yeah, and also kind of I guess maybe going back to what I was saying earlier is like when you get an idea, then you figure out is this better as a middle grade? Is this better as a picture book? Or do you think you'll ever go back to trying to write YA, or do you feel like your voice is really middle grade specific?
No, I definitely want to. I'm writing YA right now. So right now I'm working on like a vampire YA. And it's like I would love for this story to be my YA debut, but you never know. But I do feel like with middle grade being such a tough market to break into, it's just like, and with picture books are really hard to sell as well. It's one of those things where I do want to like keep my options open.
Yeah. Oh, that's great. I'm glad you're like dabbling in it all. That just gives you more opportunities, I think. Are there any other moments on the journey, maybe breakthroughs or detours or pivots that you made that we haven't talked about that you want to make sure to discuss?
No, I think we pretty much covered everything in this in my
Yeah.
bizarre. It was exactly 10 years. Like if you look at it, I started pursuing it in 2016, pursuing traditional publishing in 2016, and now it's 2026, and I've got my first book deal out. So it took 10
Yeah.
years, which I don't know if that's depressing or inspiring, but
I'm gonna go with inspiring. Yeah, and I mean, I do feel like people, if they're really serious about, especially traditional publishing, it's like it really might take you this long. So,
yeah,
like, buckle up, you know?
yeah.
Well, what is something that has surprised you on this whole 10-year journey? And it can be a good surprise or a not so good surprise or one of each.
Okay, so not so good surprises. So, like I know a lot of writers, and because it took me like 10 years to really get here, I am very aware of everything that happens, like all the psychological stuff that go on with it. So I thought I understood that when you get what you were trying to get, like, the way the goalposts keep shifting and moving, like I thought I understood that, but then like actually experiencing it has been surprising. I didn't think I would be as affected by it because I was prepared for it. But yeah, the goalposts shift. So you think, if I get a book deal, I'll be okay. Like that's good enough. But then like you're like, well, then now I need to sell another book. Otherwise, like what's the point? So it's just like you just keep like new goals keep appearing. And I think that's really tough.
Yeah, is it the sort of thing where you feel like you're really having to almost like work to enjoy the place where you are?
Yeah, Yeah, you're
Yeah.
right. It is. You have to kind of like remind yourself like this is something I could have killed for like 2 years ago. Like because as a writer, one of the weirdest things about writing is that as your book is coming out at the same time, you're kind of like failing simultaneously because you're out there trying to sell a different manuscript. So, on one hand, you might get an email and like, oh, this book got a starred review, and you're like, oh my gosh. And then at the same time, you're like, this other book, no one wants to buy it. And you're like, "Ah." And that's unfortunately the duality that we have to live with. And I think like it's you don't really understand how brutal it can be until you're experiencing it, even if intellectually you kind of get that that's something that will happen to you.
Yeah. Oh man. It's such a what am I trying to say? Just the life of a writer is so emotionally and psychologically challenging.
It
I
is. Like the peaks and the troughs are just so drastic. Um
yeah.
and I don't think writing attracts the most emotionally stable people in
Yeah. Well, we got to get our emotions out. That's why we have to keep writing. Get all
Yeah,
those emotions out on the page.
exactly.
Well, I tell you what, that was when, after my second novel died on submission, and I was not doing well for a while, like just mentally and emotionally and psychologically. But then I started writing. I knew, I was like, even though I'm scared to start writing, I know I'm going to feel better if I start writing something new. And I switched genres into a thriller, and I wrote like a very dark thriller. And I feel like I poured a lot of my kind of dark energy and like anger into that book. And it was like that's what I needed to do. Those emotions had to go somewhere. So put them on the page where they're safe.
Yes. Free therapy.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. Yeah, a lot of times I feel like I don't exactly know what my own feelings are about something until I write about it.
Yeah, no, I'm exactly the same way. It's like I write compulsively. I don't write because I think I'm good at writing. I write because I have to. So,
Well, okay. So we're nearing the end now, and I do ask on every episode for a tip for the road, and it can be a tip about writing, or it can be a tip about, how do you handle all the rejection? How do you stay motivated to keep going? Or just any other tip that you want to impart to us.
okay, I have a good tip for how I kind of like deal with the fact that there are a lot of rejections in writing. And my tip is I think of Jane Austen, who this is a weird tip. I think of Jane Austen because she only published six novels, right? And that's in her case, it's because she died at 42. So she died very young. But, she published six amazing novels. And those wonderful books are all she left behind. And if I can do that in the time that I live, it might take me longer than 42 years because I'm not Jane Austen. But that
Yeah,
six,
yeah.
six good books is like a good goal to kind of give yourself, no matter how long it takes you to get there. Like six good books that you're proud of.
Yeah, and you're already halfway there.
Yeah,
So,
there you go.
yeah. Well, and I think that's, if you Jane Austen is a great one to think about because, okay, so she left behind those six books, and then think about all the things they've spawned, like all
Yeah.
the films that have been inspired, all the other books that have been inspired by her. So, yeah, because I do think, I mean, and this is something that comes up too of like, publishing is a business, and they want to like get all the books out of you. And they're saying like, okay, publish a book a year or whatever. And it's like, no, you don't have to do that many.
Yeah, exactly. You don't have to. We feel like if we don't have something coming out immediately, we're a failure, right? Like if you don't have something like that's on the way, we're like, oh, we're not doing what we're supposed to be doing. But yeah, it doesn't need to be like that.
Yeah,
Six good books.
I like that. I like that. Also, I just finally realized that your henna on your hand says Ritu.
Oh yeah,
Yeah, that's so beautiful. Uh,
thank you.
Well, thank you so much for being here. I am so, so happy that I got to talk to you because I feel like I mean, of course, I love all the episodes on this podcast, but I feel like your episode speaks very much to me as somebody who has had several books die on submission. I'm like, okay, Eva, just be like Moniza, just keep going. It's gonna happen one day. So it's hopefully very inspiring for other people too.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to The Long Road to Publishing. Many of the books we discuss on the podcast can be found at my bookshop shop, the link for which is in the show notes. My guests' books and many of the resources we discuss on the show can also be found in the show notes. You can find me online on Instagram, Blue Sky, and Substack with the handle Eva Langston. Even better, subscribe to my free newsletter for writers at evalangston.substack.com and feel free to send me an email. The podcast address is longroad.pub@gmail.com. The Long Road to Publishing is produced and edited by me, Eva Langston, and the intro-outro music comes from the artist's sound roll on Upbeat. Be sure to rate, review, and subscribe to the show, and I'll be back soon with more publishing stories and more tips for the road.